and welcome to another session of Informally Formal. I'm truly excited because once again we have one of my favorite person to talk to, Dr. Zaidi Sattar. He's been on our program before, so I'll just briefly introduce him. Dr. Zaidi Sattar is the chairman of PRI in Bangladesh. He got his PhD from Boston University, taught for many years in the United States, and worked for the World Bank as an advisor, as a senior economist, and has held so very many positions. But the most notable one, as I had mentioned earlier in my first talk with Dr. Zaidi Sattar, that he was instrumental in formulating the 6th and the 7th five-year plan of Bangladesh. A very renowned,
and also
yes,
two perspective plans.
Yes.
Two perspective plans.
Perspective plans is
2010 to 2021, and then 2021 to 41.
Oh, absolutely.
These are all
absolutely.
out there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And also, if our viewers remember, Dr. Zaidi Sattar is also a civil servant turned trade economist. So welcome, Dr. Zaidi Sattar. It's such a pleasure to have you back in our show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, very good. So our today's topic is exchange rate.
So how do you then help exporters through the exchange rate without causing that price problem that would be coming from the price effect on imports, right? So now here's, we have to devise a way of, let's say, if we agree that no, exporters really are in bad shape and they need some measure of depreciation. This point, 0.05% depreciation annually is not helping exporters at all. So if we, let's say, agree that, okay, they need some, some incentive in as far as through the exchange rate is concerned, right? And also because, their competitors, India, Pakistan, Vietnam, and others, they have depreciated much more during the year. So we have to do something about neutralizing the price effect if there is an exchange rate depreciation, we have to neutralize the price effect on imports. Now, let me give you a principle. If there is a 10% depreciation of the exchange rate, let's say 85 to the Taka, 10% would be about another 8.5 Taka. Let's say the exchange rate goes to 90 to 95 Taka. A 10% depreciation of the exchange rate is equivalent to a 10% cash subsidy on all exports across the board. Do you realize this?
Absolutely.
Exports, they are getting subsidies, non-garment. Garment exports don't get that much subsidy, but non-garments, what they call non-traditional items, they get from 5 to 20%, selective items get. But a 10% depreciation gives you subsidy across the board.
Across the board subsidy.
Yeah. Including remittances.
Sure.
Remittances also get the benefit of, instead of 85 Taka to the dollar, they get 95 Taka to the dollar. So you have a certain tariff rate, and we calculate the average tariff rate is, the protective tariff rate is 26.7%. But the actual tariff incident, when you take all the trade taxes, it comes to something close to 50%. So all of that goes up by 10% if you depreciate the currency by 10%.
Sure.
So you have to do, if you want to really neutralize the price effect of this exchange rate depreciation, you have to do something about those tariffs. What you can do, if you can cut tariffs by 10% across the board, then there will be no price effect that we are talking about or we are worried about.
Sure.
Now, that's the difficult task. We don't have a uniform tariff. If the tariff was, let's say, 10% across the board, we could easily, from 10%, if you bring it down to 9%, that would be a 10% reduction in tariff. But we have a very complex tariff structure. We've got custom duties, we have supplementary duties, it's a mess.
But then again, don't you think we have to balance with the domestic producers that gonna cry foul?
Good point. Now, I have an answer to that question too. You know something? The way I've described this depreciation, a 10% depreciation across the board, is like an increase in tariffs 10%. So when you increase tariffs 10%, you're increasing tariffs on output 10%. You're also increasing tariffs on input 10%. Now, if you depreciate the currency by 10%, okay, there are two kinds of products. You know, producers, they produce something, they also use inputs, right?
Correct.
So when you depreciate the currency 10%, the price of the output that they produce, protected outputs, go up by 10% in the domestic economy. But they import certain inputs, they procure certain inputs domestically. But those inputs also, prices rise 10%. If we neutralize the tariffs by cutting down tariffs 10%, so they should be where they were before. They don't get the 10% increase in tariffs. We are trying to defend the prices of all imports and import substitutes by cutting down the tariffs after the exchange rate. That is the suggestion. If you don't want price effect, then you'd have to neutralize that price effect by cutting tariffs 10% also. In which case, the protection, those who want protection, we can tell them your protection is unchanged. Your protection is unchanged because your output tariffs went up 10% because of the depreciation. So we are asking for reducing that by 10%. Your input tariffs, which went up 10%, we are neutralizing it by saying that let's bring down tariffs 10%. So input and output tariffs are adjusted downwards 10% after the depreciation. There is a term we use for describing this kind of depreciation. It's called compensated depreciation. You're not doing depreciation alone, but you're compensating. That means you're neutralizing the price effect by cutting down, the tariffs. And we have so much across the board tariff that there is a justification. Now, let me add, we've got very high tariffs on, let's say, automobiles, alcoholic beverages, and firearms, because we want to discourage automobiles. We want to raise revenue. That's a revenue objective, not protection. Alcoholic beverages, we want to discourage consumption. And also raise revenue in the process. So we can make the adjustment, the tariff adjustment after depreciation, leave the tariff incidence or tax incidence the same for alcoholic beverages and automobiles. We can do that by, if you cut down, let's say, the top tariff rate, which is custom duty of 25%. This has been, the top tariff rate of 25% has been there since 2005. It hasn't changed. So as we were saying, we can protect the revenue from automobiles and alcoholic beverages, etc., by making some adjustment for these. But for the rest, we can make the adjustment so that the price effect is neutralized. So this is the argument.
Right. Dr. Sattar, we are at the tail end now. So your closing remarks.
My conclusion is, this is the difference between, we've talked much about the nominal exchange rate, the 85 Taka to the dollar, but what really affects competitiveness of our export is what is called the real effective exchange rate. And that is determined by the relative level of inflation in Bangladesh versus those countries where our exports go to. Now, it turns out over the last 5 to 10 years, the inflation rate in those countries have been very low. Europe and North America are the principal destination, right? So the inflation rate in Bangladesh has been much higher than, as a result, the Taka has been losing value much faster than the US dollar or the euro. So the real effective exchange rate is appreciating. That is, And that is the cry from the exporters. Competitiveness of our exports are being undermined. Competitiveness is being undermined because of this differential inflation. And if we don't adjust our exchange rate consistent with the inflation differences, we are having an appreciated exchange rate. And that is the problem that exporters suffer very. So this exchange rate depreciation idea is actually to boost exports. But with compensated depreciation, we want to also neutralize the impact on import prices as well as protection.
What in effect that are you suggesting then? Give me a number. Where do you think, what do you think we should depreciate the dollar to, Taka?
I would think that there's a very clear argument, I think, to have a 5 to 10% depreciation currently. We had calculated the rise in the real effective exchange rate from fiscal year 2012 to fiscal year 2017 or 18. And we found even the Bangladesh Bank report showed there was a appreciation of 35 to 40% in the real effective exchange rate. That might have slowed a little bit recently, but that's a very big appreciation, and we need to cut. Exporters are really, they're seriously affected because they cannot affect prices. They cannot, there's no protection in the international market. They have to compete at whatever prices are given. They are price takers, basically.
Dr. Sattar, we understand that argument. We already made that argument, okay, right? So just tell me, what are you proposing? So if Bangladesh Bank has also ascertained that, over the last so many years, we have looked at about a 35% differential. So, but you're suggesting that we ought to do just a 5 or 10%.
We have to start somewhere. So, no, just because there's a 40% appreciation in the real effective exchange, it doesn't mean you have to do a 40% depreciation.
Understood.
You have to start with, I think 5 to 10% is very realistic. At the same time, we need to make a downward adjustment of tariffs by 5 to 10% so that you neutralize the price effects, okay? That is the ideal thing for Bangladesh to do. You have to do on both sides. Our tariffs are simply way above our competitors. We have enough research done already.
Right. I think that does it. That does it, Dr. Sattar, because that's what I was trying to get to, and for our audience to understand that on one side there is a clear argument that the exporters are making that we ought to depreciate the Taka versus the dollar, let's say, for example. But then what they do not know, what you suggested, is what the policymakers ought to do is do a compensatory on the tariff side.
That's
so
right.
That basically is the meat of our discussion today, Dr. Zaidi Sattar. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's basically our recommendation, and I wish I had more time. Whenever I have a discussion with you, Dr. Sattar, you know how time flies, and
absolutely.
These are such intricate and interesting subjects that unfortunately in a brief 20 minutes or 30 minutes, it just can't be done. In any event, thank you for making the time. And I would like to thank our audience for joining us for this absolutely exciting topic that everyone is talking about, especially our exporters. So I would, with an invitation for our audience to join us again for our next episode, I'd leave it there, sign off by wishing everyone to stay safe. And with that, bye-bye.